The nanny was caught breastfeeding the millionaire's twins. No one believed what he did next. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy intense, emotional love stories full of twists and turns, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you help this space grow and motivate me to bring even more stories made especially for you. Grace Turner never imagined her life would change so drastically at 26. Working as a clerk in a small coffee shop in downtown Seattle, she lived a simple life, but one full of quiet dreams. When she discovered the pregnancy, her heart pulsed with a mix of fear, surprise, and hope. It wasn't the ideal moment, but she saw in that new life the chance to finally build the family she never had. The baby's father, Austin Warren, was a man with an easy smile and gentle words, someone who seemed kind during the casual meets after work. Grace believed she had found someone with whom she could share something real. But everything fell apart the moment she decided to tell the truth. "Austin, I'm pregnant," she said, holding the test with trembling hands as if that little object could shatter if she squeezed too hard. His smile vanished. The change was instant, almost cruel. He took a step back as if he physically needed to distance himself from the news. "Grace, this can't be happening," he replied, rubbing his head. "I'm not ready for this? A baby now? No, this changes everything." She took a deep breath, trying to find courage inside a chest that was already starting to ache. "I know it changes everything, but I'm willing to take this on. I'm not asking for anything but your honesty." Austin looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "I can't be a father. I don't want this. I'm sorry." And then he just walked away. No argument, no goodbye, not even a glance back. That night, Grace cried herself to sleep. Not for the man who left, but for the child she already loved, even without having seen its face. The months that followed were hard, but she pushed forward with a strength that surprised even herself. She worked double shifts, saved every penny, and set up a tiny nursery in her small apartment. She bought a second-hand crib, painted the wall a soft blue, and put up a moon-shaped nightlight. Every detail was carefully chosen with love. Sometimes she would talk softly to the baby, gently stroking her growing belly. "You're not alone. I promise I'll be everything you need," she whispered, imagining the future they'd have together. It was on a cold November morning, just weeks before her due date, that the pain came. A sharp, sudden pain, slicing through her like a blade. Grace dropped to her knees on the living room floor, the phone slipping from her trembling hand. "Please, someone," she tried to call for help, but barely managed to whisper. A neighbor heard the noise and rushed to help. Minutes later, Grace was being rushed to the hospital. The corridor lights spun above her as doctors and nurses spoke words she couldn't fully understand. Everything was sound. Everything was fear. Everything was pain. When she finally woke up in the white room, the silence was deafening. The doctor approached with a heavy, cautious look, as if his face already held the tragedy. "Grace, I'm sorry. We did everything we could." Her world stopped in that moment. She didn't hear anything after that. Just a brutal emptiness inside her chest. An emptiness that seemed to swallow everything she was. The physical pain came in waves, but the emotional one was even greater. Days later, when her body began producing milk preparing to feed a baby that would never come, she broke all over again. Her body insisted on remembering what fate had taken away. Grace cried alone in the empty room, staring at the crib that would never be used. The room seemed to mock her, as if every object represented a promise that would never be fulfilled. But life didn't wait for her to recover. Bills came. Rent was due. Reality crashed down on her like a cold storm. She knew she had no choice. She had to work. She had to survive. even with a heart still in ruins. In the days following the tragedy, Grace moved through life as if walking through a thick fog. The apartment was too quiet. The pale blue room, the one she had painted so lovingly, felt like an open wound that bled every time she walked past the door. The soft scent of fresh paint mixed with the wooden crib's worn aroma reminded her of the future that would never come. She tried to keep herself standing, but the pain squeezed her chest with an almost suffocating weight. And when she least expected it, her body reacted cruelly. The milk came, reminding her of the baby that would never be in her arms. On a cloudy morning, while sipping cold coffee she had forgotten on the table, the phone rang. The sound echoed through the apartment, breaking the silence almost violently. Grace set the mug down, took a deep breath, and answered. "Hello?" she said, her voice low and tired. "Grace? This is Meredith," from the nanny agency, answered a female voice, firm and professional, but with a hint of gentleness. Meredith was a woman in her early 40s, known for her seriousness and the integrity with which she ran the agency. "I know you've been going through a difficult time. I'm very sorry for your loss." Grace closed her eyes, trying to swallow the lump in her throat. "Thank you. I'm still trying to adjust." "I can imagine," Meredith went on. "The reason I'm calling is urgent. There's an opening for a live-in nanny. Stable work, good pay, and housing included." Grace straightened up in her chair. It was exactly what she needed. But something in her voice trembled as she asked, "Is it to care for children?" "Yes," Meredith confirmed. "Twins, 6-month-old babies." Grace's heart seemed to stop. She instinctively glanced at the partially open door to the blue room. The crib was still in there, untouched, silent. I don't know if I can do it," she murmured, her voice trembling. "Not now, not this soon." On the other end of the line, Meredith took a deep breath before answering. "I understand, but let me explain the situation before you decide." Grace remained silent. The baby's father is Ethan Caldwell. You may have heard the name. He's a tech entrepreneur here in Seattle. His wife died during childbirth, and he's been caring for the twins with help from staff, but he needs someone dedicated, someone patient. The babies are healthy, but emotionally very sensitive. Grace closed her eyes as another wave of pain washed through her. She imagined 2 tiny children growing up without a mother. The feeling struck too deep. "The pay is above average, Grace, and it offers stability. I know things have been hard for you. This job could give you the breathing room you need to start over." Grace looked around. Late rent, bills piled up on the table, a nearly empty fridge. Her world was falling apart, and she knew she couldn't go on like that. But the thought of holding another baby so soon tore her heart open. "Even so," she asked in a whisper, "when would it start?" "Today," Meredith replied without hesitation. "The family is desperate for help." Grace fell silent for a long moment. The soft sound of rain against the window filled the room with a familiar melancholy. She felt her chest ache, physically and emotionally, as she stood to look once more into the blue room. She placed her hands on the doorframe and whispered, more to herself than to anyone else, "If I stay here, I'll fall apart." She knew she had to go. Not to erase the past, but to survive its weight. "I'll take it, Meredith," she finally said, her voice steady, though still hoarse. "Tell Amar, Caldwell, I'll be there." "Great, Grace. I'll send you the address. And be strong. You've got this." When she hung up, Grace allowed herself a deep breath, like someone trying to pull her soul back into her body. She packed a small bag, chose simple clothes, and placed her documents in a folder. She looked one last time at the empty crib. Something inside her whispered, "This isn't running away. It's a new beginning." And as she closed the apartment door behind her, Grace had no idea that this decision, so difficult, so painful, was about to set her on a path toward a destiny that would change everything. Grace arrived in the upscale Seattle neighborhood just before dusk. The sky was gray, shrouded in the city's signature cold mist, leaving the streets damp and silent. When the rideshare car turned the last corner, she saw the Caldwell mansion for the first time. A modern structure with clean lines, broad glass walls, and an impeccably trimmed garden. Everything about it looked elegant, sophisticated, and profoundly empty. The driver pulled up in front of the automatic gate. Grace took a deep breath. Her stomach twisted, not only from anxiety, but from the emotional weight of walking into a home where two babies lived without their mother. It felt like stepping into the echo of something she had lost herself. The front door opened before she even reached the steps. A middle-aged woman with a tired expression and upright posture was waiting for her. "Grace Turner?" The woman asked. "Yes, that's me. I'm Mrs. Alvarez, the housekeeper. Mr. Caldwell asked me to receive you." Grace simply nodded, keeping her coat closed against the chill. As she stepped inside, she was immediately struck by the atmosphere. The interior was beautiful, polished wooden floors, modern furniture, tasteful and elegant decor, but the air felt heavy, as if sorrow had soaked into the very walls. It was a house far too big for so little warmth. As they walked down the hall, Mrs. Alvarez explained, "Mr. Caldwell is a good man, but after his wife passed, he shut himself off. He does what he can for the babies, but it hasn't been easy." Grace glanced at the walls, where a large photo stood out. A wedding picture, Ethan Caldwell smiling, a real, genuine smile, holding the hand of a beautiful young woman, blonde with bright eyes. Emily, the woman who died during childbirth. Grace swallowed hard. Grief hung in the frames like a shadow. The twins are in their room. "They were fussy a little while ago," the housekeeper said. "They cry a lot. Is there a medical issue?" Grace asked, concerned. "No. They're healthy, thank God. But they have mild reflux. Nothing serious, just uncomfortable. And they miss their mother. It makes them restless. They crave touch constantly, wake up many times, want to be held more than anything. It's a silent grief." Grace felt her chest tighten. Babies in mourning. The world felt unbearably cruel. When they reached the nursery door, the housekeeper opened it slowly. The sound hit instantly, high-pitched, insistent cries, both at once. The kind of crying that slices through the heart of anyone who hears it. In the double crib, two beautiful babies, fair-skinned with wisps of blonde hair, writhed, their faces red from distress. Lily, the little girl, clasped her hands as if pleading for help, while Noah arched his back, uncomfortable from the reflux. Grace stepped forward slowly. Her chest tingled, an involuntary, almost painful reaction. She whispered softly, "Hey, little ones, I'm here. It's going to be okay." The twins didn't know her, but they responded to her tone. Lily's crying eased slightly. Noah blinked rapidly, as if trying to understand the new presence. Grace picked them up gently, sliding one arm beneath each. The sensation was devastating. The softness of their skin. Their warmth. The small weight in her arms. Her body reacted with a tight ache in her chest, the same ache that struck every time she remembered the baby she had lost. As she turned, trying to steady her breath, she heard firm footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know it was him. Ethan Caldwell had entered the room. Grace turned slowly, still holding the two babies. Her eyes met his for the first time. He was tall, much taller than in the photos. Neatly groomed brown hair, a trace of stubble giving him a weary look, and his eyes, blue, striking, intense, but completely empty, like all life had drained out of them the moment his wife died. "You must be Grace," he said, his voice deep and polite, but lifeless. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell." He nodded, his posture impeccable, but his gaze shifted from the babies to her, as if trying to understand how she had calmed them so quickly. "They seem calmer," he noted, almost surprised. "They just need to be held," Grace replied, rocking Lily gently. "And they need someone to really be here." Fully. Ethan stared at her for a few long, silent seconds, the kind that seemed to carry years of compressed pain. Then he took a deep breath and simply said, "I hope you can stay, Grace." It sounded simple, but something in the way he said it felt like a plea, or maybe a warning. The housekeeper quietly stepped out, leaving only the two of them and the babies in the room. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, heavy, almost electric. Grace felt a chill ripple down her spine. It was the feeling of having crossed an invisible line the moment she entered that house. A line that would change everything in her life. And his, without realizing it, she held the babies closer. Ethan noticed the gesture. His gaze shifted, just for a second. Something in that brief, silent moment had begun to change. Grace realized on the very first day that the house didn't just need a nanny. It needed someone who knew how to touch wounds without making them bleed. And, in a painfully ironic way, she knew exactly how to do that. In the softly lit room, with the glow filtering through the large glass windows, a routine began to form almost naturally. Lily was the most sensitive. She furrowed her tiny brow at the slightest sudden movement, seeking human warmth with a heartbreaking urgency. Noah, though calmer, had episodes of reflux that left him irritated and uncomfortable. Grace knelt beside the double crib and whispered, "I'm here, little ones. You don't have to be afraid." She picked up Lily first, supporting the baby's tiny head with gentle care. The soft scent of infant milk mixed with a faint powdery smell sent a warm shiver down Grace's spine. Feeling that small body pressed against her chest hit her with a force she wasn't prepared to face. A tight ache rose in her breast, a painful pressure, both physical and emotional. Her body reacted as if greeting a child who no longer existed. Grace closed her eyes for a moment, fighting the wave of pain. "Please, not now," she whispered to herself. But when she opened her eyes and saw Lily nestling closer, something inside her softened. With Noah settled in her other arm, she began humming an old lullaby, one her mother used to sing when Grace was a child, before disappearing from their lives. Her voice echoed low and sweet, trembling in parts. The babies listened, calmed, as if touched by something magical. Mrs. Alvarez walked past the hallway and saw the scene through the cracked door. Her usually stern expression softened for a second. "They never relax like this," she remarked. Grace smiled faintly, rocking her body to the rhythm of the lullaby. Maybe they just need to feel someone is really here, truly here. In the days that followed, Grace established a routine of comfort. Circular belly massages to ease Noah's reflux, slow walks around the room to soothe Lily, soft music, warm evening baths, quiet morning playtime. She followed every guideline from the agency, but added her own instinct, an instinct born from pain, but also from the love she still carried. Ethan watched everything from a distance. Sometimes he would appear at the nursery door, silent. He'd stand there, motionless, watching Grace calm his children as if she had been born for it. And he couldn't understand how someone who had arrived so recently could offer the babies something no one else had managed: peace. One afternoon, while Grace held Noah upright to help with his reflux, Ethan approached closer than usual. She felt his presence before hearing his voice. "He seems calmer with you," Ethan said, leaning against the doorframe. Grace looked at Noah, then at Ethan. He just needed comfort. Sometimes contact helps more than any medicine. Ethan crossed his arms, his blue eyes fixed on her, but this time they weren't cold like before. There was curiosity, maybe even gratitude. "You've been surprising, Grace," he admitted. "They've been different since you got here." She smiled, but the smile almost collapsed when Noah snuggled deeper into her chest. The pressure in her breast surged again, sharp, painful, a physical reminder of everything she tried to bury. Grace quickly looked away, trying to control her breathing so Ethan wouldn't notice the sudden tension in her posture. "I just want them to feel safe," she replied. He stepped further into the room. Ethan's eyes searched hers as if trying to uncover something hidden. "You also seem to understand this house in a way no one else ever has," he said, with unexpected sincerity. Grace swallowed hard. If he knew what she felt every time she held one of the babies, the weight, the warmth, the involuntary ache tightening her chest, if he knew her body still produced milk, even with no baby to feed, that every reflex was like an arrow reminding her of what she'd lost, she stayed silent. She couldn't speak. Ethan noticed her hesitation, but interpreted it as shyness. With a tired sigh, he stepped back toward the hall. "If you need anything, Grace, anything at all, tell me." When he disappeared down the corridor, she finally exhaled the breath she'd been holding. Lily began crying in the crib, and Grace rushed to comfort her. The moment she picked the baby up, the same sudden, hot, overwhelming ache hit her chest. Grace rested her face against the girl's tiny head. "Please, don't do this to me," she whispered. But it wasn't Lily doing this. It was her body, her past, her grief. And in that moment, for the first time, Grace realized that caring for these babies wasn't healing her pain. It was deepening it, and she didn't know how long she could hide it before someone noticed. The house was submerged in a heavy silence when the clock struck 2:43 in the morning. The kind of silence that exists only in houses far too big, where every shadow seems to hold a fragment of sorrow. Grace slept in the small room reserved for the nannies, exhausted after an intense day with the twins. But her rest didn't last long. Noah's cry cut through the walls like a plea for help. She opened her eyes immediately. She recognized that cry, shrill, desperate, different from hunger or sleep. It was a cry of pain, of discomfort, reflux. Grace hurried out of bed, slipping on her socks as she walked through the dark corridor. The soft creak of the floorboards echoed under her steps. When she entered the nursery, she found Noah arching his back, his little face red, his tiny hands clenched into fists. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm here," she said, picking him up gently. His warm little body met the warmth of her chest, and the instinct to protect him washed over her like a wave, strong, uncontrollable. She tried everything she had learned. First, she changed his diaper, even knowing that wasn't the reason for the crying. But Noah kept sobbing, writhing, gasping. Then she walked around the room, rocking him with slow movements. "It's okay, Noah. I know. It hurts, doesn't it? I know what pain is." Nothing changed. She turned on some soft music on her phone, a gentle melody that usually helped. But Noah didn't react. His crying only intensified. Grace then placed him belly to belly, resting his tiny head on her shoulder. It was a technique that always worked, but not that night. Noah was desperate. And with every sob, Grace felt her heart break a little more. His cry hit a place inside her that was still raw, torn, barely healed. "Please, Noah, help me help you," she pleaded, her voice cracking. Then it happened. In his desperation, Noah turned his little head, searching for her breast, like any baby would. Pure instinct. He sought warmth, scent, closeness, exactly as he would have done with his mother. Grace froze. "Noah, no, sweetheart. You already ate," she said, trying to gently move him away. But when his tiny body trembled with a harsher sob, she felt her own body react. A sudden, warm, painful pressure deep inside her chest. Her milk came. Her body responded to his crying as if responding to her own lost child. A primal, hormonal, instinctive reflex, impossible to control. And before Grace could even process what was happening, Noah found her breast and began to nurse, for real. Time seemed to freeze. The crying stopped. Noah relaxed. His breathing grew soft, peaceful. For the first time that night, he was calm. Grace remained still, shocked, her heart racing as a cold shiver spread across her skin. She looked upward, trying to keep control, but tears came, hot, silent, unstoppable. "Oh God, I didn't mean," she whispered, barely audible. But Noah snuggled closer, his eyes half closed, trusting, safe. He was okay. He was comfortable. He was at peace. She didn't pull him away. Not because she chose not to, not because she consciously decided, but because deep in her body and her soul, something connected to him involuntarily. It was as if her body whispered, "You are still a mother," even if everything had been taken from her. Crying silently, Grace rested her chin on Noah's tiny head. It was the wrong moment, improbable, impossible. Yet it awakened an old need within her, the need to care, to nourish, to soothe. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," she repeated, not knowing if she apologized to the baby, to fate, or to the child she never got to hold. And the moment Noah fell asleep against her, breathing lightly and peacefully, Grace knew that night had changed everything. And she also knew that no one, absolutely no one, could ever find out. The house remained cloaked in silent twilight as Grace, still seated in the armchair by the crib, felt Noah's small, relaxed body finally surrendered to sleep. His cries had ceased completely, replaced by the soft, peaceful breaths of a baby who had found relief after much suffering. The room was warm, lit only by the soft amber glow of a bedside lamp that cast long shadows across the walls decorated in gentle shades of blue and white. Grace was still crying, silent tears trailing down her face beyond her control. She held Noah carefully, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The shock still paralyzed her. Her body trembled, not only from emotion, but from fear. She knew what had just happened crossed every line of professionalism, even though it had been instinctive, uncontrollable, and voluntary. She was about to stand and lay Noah in his crib when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Firm footsteps. Adult footsteps. Ethan's. Before she could even think of composing herself, the door opened. Ethan Caldwell stepped into the room. He wore a plain black t-shirt and gray sweatpants, likely just out of bed. His brown hair was slightly tousled, and his normally cool, impenetrable blue eyes still carried traces of sleep. But everything in him changed the moment his gaze fell upon the scene before him. He froze, literally. The silence became a wall of ice between them. Ethan's expression was impossible to read at first. His eyes scanned every detail with precision. Grace's exposed skin, the small Noah nestled against her breast, the baby's peaceful breathing, the tears streaking down the nanny's face. His face turned pale. "Grace, what's going on?" he asked, his voice low, almost hoarse, as if he'd lost his breath. Grace panicked instantly. "Mr. Caldwell, It's not what it looks like, please," she stammered, voice trembling, trying to cover herself with one hand while holding Noah with the other. But it was hard. Everything was hard. The baby was still there, sleeping, at peace. She was shaking so much it looked like she might fall apart. I tried everything," she continued, frantic. He wouldn't stop crying. He was in pain. Nothing worked. "I swear I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't know it would." Her words tumbled out, messy, frantic, driven by fear. Grace felt a crushing mix of guilt, shame, and desperation. She couldn't breathe properly. "I tried to stop him, but she couldn't finish the sentence." It was like her voice had been ripped from her throat. Ethan didn't move. Not a single step forward, not a single step back. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture. He made no sudden movement. But his eyes were shattered, confused, wounded, stunned. A man who had already lost his wife in childbirth, now seeing another woman feeding his son in an instinctual act he couldn't begin to understand. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The silence between them was like a storm about to break. Grace clutched Noah tighter to her chest, more terrified than ever. Her breath hitched as she tried once more to explain. "I didn't mean to, please. Don't think that. I just wanted to help." He was hurting, but Ethan stepped back. His breathing grew heavier. His face was a battlefield between shock and sorrow. He looked away, not in anger, but because he seemed unable to face the scene for another second. Without a word, Ethan walked out of the room. The door remained slightly ajar, letting the hallway light cast a white rectangle across the polished wooden floor. Grace stayed where she was, motionless, feeling the weight of it all crash down on her like an inevitable collapse. Her entire body trembled. Noah slept, innocent, unaware of the chaos that had just erupted around him. And Grace knew, in that exact moment, that something terrible was about to happen. "My life is over," she whispered, in a voice so faint even she could barely hear it, but her heart knew. That moment would change everything. The gray morning light poured through the mansion's wide windows as Grace descended the stairs with slow, heavy steps. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She had barely slept. Her chest ached, physically and emotionally, and the weight of guilt crushed every part of her body. She had rehearsed 1,000 explanations in the night, but none seemed enough. None could erase what had happened. When she reached the kitchen, she found Mrs. Alvarez making coffee. The woman looked up and, upon seeing Grace's condition, simply sighed. She didn't ask anything. She didn't need to dot "Mr. Caldwell is in the office," the housekeeper said quietly. "He asked to see you when you woke up." Grace felt the ground disappear beneath her for a moment. She nodded weakly and walked the long corridor toward the dark wooden office door. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her heart pounded in her chest like an alarm. She stopped in front of the half-open door, took a deep breath, knocked with a trembling hand. "Come in," Ethan said, that deep voice sounding colder in the stillness of morning. Grace pushed the door open slowly. The office was elegant, with shelves full of books, dark wood furniture, and a large window behind Ethan's desk that let in a pale light. He sat there, his face serious, dark circles under his eyes like someone who also hadn't slept. When his gaze met hers, Grace's stomach twisted. "Mr. Caldwell." "Hi, Grace. Sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She obeyed, but her hands visibly trembled in her lap. Ethan took a deep breath before speaking. His tone wasn't harsh, but it was distant, controlled. "I need to understand what happened last night." Grace's throat went dry. The air in the room felt too heavy to breathe. She closed her eyes for a second, and when she opened them again, tears were already forming. I don't know where to start," she said, her voice faltering. "Start with the truth," Ethan replied, leaning slightly forward, trying to stay steady even as his expression betrayed confusion. Grace squeezed her hands tightly, trying to stop the shaking. But the more she tried, the more her body betrayed her, like everything in her was about to shatter. "I lost my baby not long ago," she finally whispered, her voice heavy with grief. The words landed like a blow. Ethan blinked, surprised. He straightened in his chair, visibly shaken, but said nothing, letting her continue. Grace took a deep breath, fighting to hold on to her courage. "It was in the 8th month. I was so close. He was already real. He was mine." Her voice broke. She brought her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob, but failed. Ethan tilted his head slightly, watching her with an expression that slowly shifted from confusion to understanding and something softer. "Grace," he murmured, but she kept going, desperate to explain before the moment slipped away. "My body still produces milk," she confessed, her face soaked in tears. "I didn't want it to happen. I swear. But last night, Noah was hurting. He cried so much, I tried everything. I swear I did. The tears were falling fast now, hot, uncontrollable. I tried to pull away, I did, but he was desperate, and my body responded. It was instinct. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't planned. Her breathing was ragged. I just wanted to calm him. I just wanted to help. Please believe me. I swear I didn't mean any harm." She covered her face with her hands, unable to contain her sobs. Her entire body was begging for forgiveness. A deep silence fell over the office. Ethan didn't speak for several long seconds, but it wasn't a cold silence. It was a silence that seemed to weigh on him too, a silence of someone who recognized pain because he had lived through his own. He stood slowly, walked to the window, and placed his hands on the frame, breathing deeply. When he finally spoke, there wasn't a trace of anger in his voice. "Grace, I lost Emily during childbirth," he said, staring out at the garden. "The twins were born, but I lost something too. Something far too big." Grace looked up, still crying, and saw the vulnerability in his posture. A broken man recognizing the pain in someone equally broken. "I see you trying to help my children. I see the care, the patience, the kindness." He ran a hand over his face as if trying to gather the scattered pieces of himself. "And what I saw last night, it scared me. Not because I thought badly of you, but because it hurt, because I wasn't ready." Grace gasped softly. He turned to face her at last. "I'm not going to fire you." The words struck the air like something unreal. Grace let out a quiet sob. "Mem are." "Caldwell, and about what happened last night, I don't know how to feel about it," he added, his voice lower, more sincere. "But I know you didn't mean any harm." He took 2 steps closer. "You were trying to soothe my son. And deep down, you were trying to soothe something inside yourself too." Grace placed a hand on her chest, overwhelmed by a pain that was part relief, part shame. "I never meant to cross a line," she said in a broken whisper. Ethan shook his head slowly. "I know, and that's why this is all complicated. For me, for you, for all of us here." They stood there, eyes locked in a silence thick with unsaid feelings, confusion, sorrow, guilt, but also a strange understanding that seemed to pull them closer instead of pushing them apart. Grace wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I'll do everything I can to make sure this never happens again," she promised. Ethan drew in a deep breath, his gaze on her intense enough to make her heart falter. "I know you will." But his eyes said something else, something Grace wasn't ready to understand. Not yet. The next morning felt normal, or at least as normal as it could in a house marked by recent loss and raw emotions. But the calm wouldn't last. Grace tried to stick to her routine, caring for the twins with extra gentleness. Still feeling fragile after the intense conversation with Ethan, she kept her head down, avoiding lingering glances from the staff. The air around her felt heavier, as if something was about to erupt. And it was. The first spark ignited in the mansion's laundry room. Claire, one of the oldest employees, a sharp-tongued woman in her early 40s with a perpetually suspicious gaze, had overheard fragments of a conversation between Mrs. Alvarez and another worker. Nothing concrete. Just a stray sentence, a misunderstood comment, but enough to ignite a fire. "Did you hear? Something strange happened between the new nanny and the baby," she whispered, with the venomous tone of someone who thrives on inflating tragedy. Other staff overheard. They filled in the blanks with assumptions. Details were added, facts twisted. And someone, no one knew who, decided to post an anonymous comment on a local Seattle neighborhood forum. The millionaire Caldwell's nanny crossed the line. Something very inappropriate happened with one of the babies. That one sentence spread like wildfire. Within hours, comments poured in. "That's disturbing. What kind of woman is that? Someone should look into this. An emotionally unstable nanny with infants? Dangerous." Then came the cruel assumptions. "Sounds like she has psychological issues. Problematic woman. No boundaries." Thanks to the internet's unforgiving speed, the story exploded in local circles. Suddenly, Grace, who didn't even have social media, was being judged by hundreds of strangers. She found out when she went to the kitchen to get a bottle for Lily and caught two staff members whispering, staring at their phones with tense expressions. "You two, okay?" she asked, still unaware. They froze. The silence said everything. Mrs. Alvarez entered moments later. Her worried eyes met Grace's. "Grace, I think you should see this." She held up her phone, hands trembling. A post was open. Grace read it, and the floor disappeared beneath her. Her body went hot, then cold. Her heart pounded. Her hands trembled. This isn't true," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I know it's not," the housekeeper replied. "But the internet doesn't care about the truth." Grace staggered back a few steps, as if she'd been physically struck. The humiliation was suffocating. The fear, paralyzing. The pain, unbearable. I can't stay here. I'm hurting this family," she said, breathing unevenly. "Grace, listen, I should leave. Maybe I deserve this." The words came out like a quiet lament, tragic, drenched in a guilt that wasn't hers to carry. But before she could move another step, the kitchen door opened. Ethan walked in. He held his phone in one hand, and the exhaustion in his eyes made it clear he'd been looking at it for hours. "Grace," he called, his voice firm. She turned slowly, like someone bracing for a final sentence. I'm so sorry, Mr. Caldwell. I'll pack my things right away." "I understand if no," he interrupted. His voice was sharp, surprisingly steady. "You're not going anywhere." She blinked, stunned. Ethan stepped fully into the kitchen, walking toward her with calm, purposeful steps. His face was tense, but not angry. It was determined. "I know exactly what happened that night," he said, locking eyes with her. "And you did nothing wrong." "But the internet saying, the internet doesn't know a damn thing," he cut her off. Everyone in the room went silent, watching like unintended witnesses to something much larger. Ethan drew in a deep breath, lifted his phone, and said, I already posted my statement. Grace furrowed her brow. Statement? He turned the screen toward her. There it was, posted from his verified account. Ethan Caldwell, clear, public, and impossible to ignore. Regarding the rumors surrounding my nanny, Grace Turner. Grace is a woman who recently faced a devastating loss, the death of her unborn child. On the night in question, my son was in significant distress. She calmed him. Period. No boundaries were crossed. Nothing inappropriate happened. I trust her. And I ask for respect toward a woman who has shown more compassion and courage than most ever will. Grace brought a trembling hand to her mouth, her eyes welling up. Mara Caldwell, why did you do that? She asked, her voice breaking. Ethan stepped closer. His usually guarded blue eyes now held something warmer, sincere. Because I was there, he said. Because I saw. Because I know who you are. And because no one is going to hurt you for something you didn't do. Grace felt her chest tighten, not with fear, this time, but with something deeper. For the first time in a long, long time, she felt seen, heard, protected, valued. The narrative began to shift. The internet started to divide. Support emerged. The hateful comments began to fade. But inside that mansion, far beyond screens and forums, something much more important had taken root. A quiet bond, unspoken, undeniable, growing between them, one they didn't fully understand yet, but couldn't ignore anymore. The morning dawned quietly at the Caldwell mansion, but there was a different kind of weight in the air, as if something long dormant was about to awaken. Ethan, still shaken by the recent events and the public defense he had made of Grace, decided to use the quiet hours to finally sort through his office. Old boxes had been stacked in a corner for months, full of documents and memories he hadn't dared touch since Emily's death. The dust from the files stirred memories he still didn't feel strong enough to face until now. Sitting on the floor, surrounded by scattered papers, Ethan opened a light wooden box Emily had once asked him to store safely when they moved into the house. Inside were photographs, small wedding mementos, and a white envelope carefully folded. In the corner, written in soft, rounded handwriting, "For my Ethan." His heart skipped a beat. His hands trembled as he opened it. The letter had been written just before the twins were born. He recognized the date. The paper carried the fragility and sweetness of the woman he had loved more than anything. He took a deep breath and began to read. "My love, if you're reading this, it means life took a turn I couldn't control." Ethan closed his eyes, holding back tears. "Motherhood changed me, Ethan. It made me stronger, more aware of the world, but also more afraid. Afraid I might not be here to watch our children grow." Her voice echoed vividly in his mind, as real as the day they had promised to build a life together. "I don't know if I'll be by your side when they're born. But if I'm not, there's one thing I want you to remember. Our children will need love. Real love, deep love, healing love." Ethan's chest tightened as he kept reading, even though his vision was blurred. "And so, I ask only one thing. If one day someone appears, someone who carries in their eyes the same pain I once felt, someone who knows loss but still chooses to care, let that person in." A tear fell onto the page. "This woman will understand our children in a way no one else could, because her heart has been broken and still, it loves. Ethan, don't push her away. She will be a gift. To you and to them." When he finished reading, Ethan didn't move. The letter sat in his lap, his heart shattered. The air felt too heavy to breathe. The clarity of Emily's words hit him like an undeniable truth. The woman she described was Grace, with all her pain, with all her strength. with the tenderness of someone who had lost and still chose to love again. Driven by something deeper than reason, Ethan stood up and left the office, holding the letter tight in his hand. He found Grace in the living room, folding the twins' freshly laundered clothes. The afternoon sunlight lit up her face, casting a warm glow on every delicate feature. "Grace," he called, his voice cracking. She looked up immediately, concern flickering in her expression. "Mar, Caldwell, is everything all right?" Ethan took a breath, stepped closer, and held out the letter. "I found this," he said, his voice barely holding steady. "Emily wrote it before she died." Grace took the paper carefully, like it was sacred. Her eyes scanned the lines, and within seconds, tears welled up. Her hands trembled. She was talking about me?" she whispered, stunned, looking up at him with vulnerable disbelief. "Yes," Ethan replied, emotion thick in his throat. "It was you, Grace. She described you before you ever stepped into this house." Grace covered her mouth as a choked sob escaped her. The tears spilled freely. I don't know what to say," she murmured. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Neither do I, but I know what I feel right now." Their eyes met, for the first time without fear, without barriers, without shame. Just two broken souls recognizing strength and pain in each other. Grace cried openly now, and Ethan, overwhelmed by the same emotion, let his own tears fall. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, spontaneous, necessary, real. They cried together, tears of sorrow, of shock, of shared grief, of healing, and of acceptance. In that moment, something aligned, as if fate itself were written into a crumpled letter and a quiet, life-changing embrace. Grace no longer belonged to the place of shame. She was no longer the nanny whispered about on the internet, no longer the woman shattered by loss. The letter had said it. Emily had chosen. And Ethan, for the first time since becoming a widower, allowed himself to feel hope. The day after the letter's revelation was anything but ordinary. Nothing felt ordinary anymore. Grace awoke with a strange mix of lightness and fear, as if the world had quietly shifted while she slept. She was no longer the woman who had walked into that house weeks before. No longer the broken version of herself who believed she deserved nothing but quiet suffering. Ethan had changed too. Emily's letter had moved something deep inside him, something spiritual. As if, through those words, his beloved, long-lost wife had given him permission to live again. Not just as a father, but as a man. The hours passed gently, in stark contrast to everything they had endured. The twins were calmer, as if they sensed the change in the air. Grace cared for them with a tenderness that now felt even more intimate, more natural, more meaningful. And Ethan watched. He followed her with his gaze, quietly, subtly, but it revealed everything. He noticed things he had never truly seen before. The way the sunlight lit up strands of her golden hair. The reverent way she held Lily. The sweetness in her voice when she soothed Noah. The strength hidden beneath tired eyes. The vulnerability she tried to mask. The very thing that made her all the more human. And he realized something else. What he felt was no longer just gratitude. It was something deeper. More dangerous. More real. That night, after putting the twins to sleep, Grace stepped out onto the porch. The breeze was cool, the night quiet, the sky scattered with stars. She hugged herself, lost in thought, in everything she'd lived through and in the unknown still ahead. Ethan found her there. He walked slowly, almost afraid to disturb the moment. He stopped just a few steps away. "Grace, are you all right?" he asked softly. She smiled, a light, genuine smile that lit up her entire face. I'm learning to be." He came closer and sat beside her on the wooden bench. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was warm, intimate, full of meanings that didn't need to be spoken. After a few moments, Ethan said, gazing at the sky, "I didn't want you to go through all this alone." Grace lowered her eyes, fidgeting with her fingers, a quiet sign of the nerves she was trying to manage. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid you'd see me as a mistake, a threat, or the problem everyone says I am." Ethan turned to her. His blue eyes reflected the dim porch light, but now they held something deeper. A new tenderness. "I see you as the strongest woman I've ever known." Grace's heart skipped a beat. He went on, "You brought my children back to life. And you brought life back to me too." She swallowed hard, trying to keep her emotions from overflowing. "Ethan, you don't have to say that." "I know I don't have to," he replied, leaning in slightly. "I want to, because it's true." Her breath hitched. Her chest warmed. Something was happening. Something real. Something inevitable. Something beyond words. Then Ethan reached out his hand, slow, cautious, asking for permission, and Grace gave it. She placed her hand in his, their fingers intertwining. The moment they touched, it was like an electric pulse, soft but overwhelming. Ethan smiled differently this time, a smile Grace had never seen on him before. A smile that didn't just appear on his face, it rose from his soul. "I don't know what happens next," he said honestly, "but I know I want to find out with you." Grace felt tears welling up, not from pain this time, but from something so beautiful her heart didn't quite know how to hold it. "I want that too," she said, voice thick with emotion. "For the first time in a long time, I want something for me." Ethan leaned in, gently, as if approaching something sacred, and Grace didn't pull away. His face hovered just inches from hers. The silence between them was so full, it felt like you could reach out and touch it. He could have stopped. She could have stepped back, but neither wanted to. And then Grace kissed him. Or maybe it was him. Or maybe they met somewhere in the middle, drawn together by something that wasn't impulsive. It was fate. The kiss began softly, shyly, just the touch of two hearts learning to beat again, but then it deepened. It grew. It breathed. A kiss of scars that recognized each other, of griefs that embraced, of souls that had been quietly intertwined long before this moment. When they parted, foreheads still resting together, Ethan whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." Grace smiled. "We both know I never really had that choice." He laughed softly, and so did she, a light, healing laugh that cleared the air and healed what words couldn't. The house, once quiet with grief, now breathed a new kind of peace. And the lesson left behind, the scandal that nearly destroyed Grace, turned out to be the path that healed them. She found in the twins the echo of what she had lost. Ethan found in her the hope he thought he'd never feel again. The twins found the warmth they had been denied by fate. And together, Grace and Ethan discovered something neither of them had expected. True love doesn't arrive when you're ready. It arrives when you finally stop running. They didn't fill each other's voids. They built something new on the ruins. Something with deep roots. Something born of pain and choosing to bloom in spite of it. And that kind of love, the love born from truth, is the kind that lasts. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what did you think of this story? What was the most emotional part for you? And from 0 to 10, what's your final score? If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to share it with someone who loves emotional stories, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. And before you go, I've chosen another deeply emotional story for you. even more intense and guaranteed to touch your heart. It's right next, waiting for you